Hey Google, set the temperature to 25 degrees. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I think it's all working the way it's supposed to be working. Yes, it is indeed. And she said she would set it 25 degrees, so that means the air conditioner will not turn on. So now I can push this button and say, good morning, hi, welcome to the live taping of Podcast Pontifications. I am your host, Evo Terra. Thank you very much for joining me. Today we shall be talking about empowerment in podcasting. It's a topic that I've had jotted down in my book O Ideas for some time now, but only that. And it finally came to me how I wanted to have this topic about empowerment in podcasting. So thanks very much for joining me. For the brand new people, you're watching the live taping of a podcast. It's when I say like things like and all those things. Yeah, none of that is going to happen in about 3 or 4 minutes when I begin the real content. I've kind of trained myself to not do the ums and the ahs over the years. But anyhow, all of this stuff you're hearing right now is going to be cut out. You are the only person, the only peoples, well, you and the 6 other people that are watching me tape this thing live, are seeing this. Yes, as I said, this is just a live taping. It's a behind the scenes. It's all the pre-work that goes into a podcast, or at least all of the pre-work that goes into making my throat working. I didn't let you watch the last hour that I've been hammering out an outline. So, you don't see all of the behind the scenes. You get to see a little bit of that behind the scenes. And it's also a place where I can say good morning to people who like to watch this. Like, for example, good morning, Arlen. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning. Well, just, hey, Betty. Thanks for watching. Peeps, I do appreciate it, as I always appreciate it, and I'm glad that you often decide to watch. Back to the new people for a moment here again. The actual live stuff will be posted at 10 o'clock. It's only 7 a.m. my time right now, but everything goes live to the general public at 10 a.m. Podcast Pontifications is where you want to be, if in fact you want to be there. You can be wherever you want, man, or not, man. It's completely up to you, right? You are empowered to do the things that you were trying to do today. Right, so we're going to talk about empowerment. As I was mentioning a moment ago, this has been, I'll tell you the full genesis of how this happened. So it was during Podcast Movement, which I watched virtually, having a conversation in the chat room, and the topic of empowerment, it came up from a very weird spot, from boudoir photography. Of all strange places. And it was a very fascinating conversation I had with that particular podcaster, and I'm blank on the name right now because I didn't write that down. And it kind of gave me the idea for a topic, but I didn't have an angle. Now I have an angle. So that's how this whole thing came up. So yes, podcasting, empowerment, all of those fun things. Also, for the people who like to watch this live, so let's talk about October. I know it's only September, but let me talk to you about October for a moment. I'm taking a vacation in October. You already know that I take off November and December every year. Why not just move it to November and December for your vacation, Evo? That would make sense, and I totally agree with you. But the person I share my life with said, no, October's better for us, so fine. So the first week of October, I'm actually going to miss the whole week. I'm going to be gone that Monday through Thursday. But what I've decided to do, rather than just, do a 3-week long episode of October, is I'm actually going to extend into November. I'm going to do the first week of November. Normally I stop on like whatever the last Thursday in October is my last episode until the next year. I come back after the first of the year. But this time I'm going to extend it so I don't shortchange anyone on that. So yes, I'm assuming, Betty, that your birthday is on October the 7th. I will not be putting out a show on October the 7th, but I will be, like I said, extending that first week of November. Just a little minor housekeeping stuff. Got it. So, and happy birthday in advance, since I will be in Belize. Will not be here to celebrate your birthday, Betty. All right, so am I ready to talk about empowerment? I think I'm ready to talk about empowerment. Shoulders are screwed up. Riding bikes in California over the weekend. I think I was hunched over the handlebars and kinked up my neck. Got a massage yesterday from our massage therapist, Christina. She comes over and massages both of us. She's great. We've had her for years. But it's still bad, so what do you do? Getting old sucks. All right. Let's read this cold open, shall we? Let's move it over here. Do all of that. Yeah, we're in the right spot. All right. Cold open time. And this has some big words in this one. The degree of autonomy and self-determination we have as podcasters is staggering. But we can get caught up in the rest of podcasting and overlook others struggling to find the freedom we enjoy. That's what I'm going to say. And pretty much how I'm going to say it. All right, so I'm ignoring the chat window until I come back. You all know this. I'm going to get the recording all set up. Where's QuickTime? It's right there. Where's the other recorder? Right there. Volume levels look good. Yeah. Okay, here we go. The degree of autonomy and self-determination we have in podcasting is staggering. But we can get caught up in the rest of podcasting and overlook others struggling to find the freedom we enjoy. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. I sometimes forget how empowering podcasting can be. I mean, I know that it is, but I tend to forget about empowerment as a primary motivation for podcasting. You see, people podcast for lots of reasons. You podcast maybe for lots of different reasons. Some people podcast to make a pile of money. Be a big pile or a small pile. Hope springs eternal for this particular bunch. And a lot of these would-be podcast millionaires give up when they realize that the road to riches is, unpaved, uncharted, complicated, and time-consuming. Some do it as a job. I mean, working in podcasting or working on a podcast. There's a slightly better chance of those people actually making some money from podcasting, but still, it's filled with uncertainty. Some of us do it as art. Not me, but some podcasters do this as art because creating things is at their very core. And audio is a beautiful medium to work within. Some podcasts for fun. I mean, pure as simple. Not much other motivation beyond that. They don't have any, or at least very few, hang-ups or expectations other than this is something to have fun with. Honestly, this is how I got started in podcasting way back in the day, and still, to a certain degree, is how I feel. Now, there are other motivations, but I keep those primary motivations out there in mind when I'm interacting with other people, especially people I don't really know all that well in the podcasting space. Each one of those types of people I mentioned previously, they all have their own goals, their own wants, and their own needs. And I understand bits and pieces of all of them. But I constantly need to remind myself that some people, podcasting is truly an act of empowerment. Empowered podcasters have their own motivations that I, from my position of privilege, I can understand them, but I'm also an egotistical narcissist. Those are true statements about me, which I try and tamp down as much as possible. But because of that, I honestly have a tough time relating to the people who podcast because of the empowerment factors. And I think I can do better. In fact, I think we all can do better acknowledging the empowering capabilities of podcasting. We can do better accepting that empowerment is a valid reason to podcast and then not foist any of our own baggage upon them or pile up our own assumptions on those who podcast for that very reason. And I also think we can do better at enabling those who podcast, not only because it's fun or an art form or a job or a path to riches, but because it gives them a voice, a sense of worth, a way to do something beyond the limitations of their own circumstances. We can start by asking a new question. when we meet a new podcaster, especially someone who may be shy and not as outgoing and egregious, if that's a word I'm looking for, as we are, instead of asking the question, so why do you podcast, or what do you podcast about? Instead of asking, why do you podcast, I think we can ask them, how does podcasting make you feel? Because while I know that when I do feel empowered when I podcast, yes, I get it. And I'm betting that you too, to a certain degree, a large degree or a small degree, also feel empowered when you podcast. My first response if someone asked me how I feel when I podcast wouldn't be empowered. No. And it might not be yours either. But for someone else, it might be. Now, maybe they don't come out and say, I podcast because I feel empowered, but they would likely use some words that would clearly point to a completely different primary motivation than you have. A different motivation than I have. I think we should all work to ensure that podcasting remains a way, not the only way, but remains a way that people can find a sense of empowerment in their lives. More to the point, I think that they deserve our support along their journey to discover exactly where that empowerment might take them. We can do our part, not to try to force them to podcast the way that we do, which is my big problem, but to listen and support, encourage, and even celebrate their successes, however they define them. Let's make all of podcasting better by also being better podcasters to other podcasters, shall we? Speaking of things we shall do, a quick Boostagram corner. Big thanks to York Campbell of Poetic Earthlings. You might have heard York previously. He has done a guest version of Podcast Pontification while I was on break last year. York bought me a virtual coffee and sent the following note. Thank you, Evo, for making podcasting more thoughtful. Well, you are welcome, York, and I hope you're thinking that today's episode is also somewhat thoughtful. Last thing is sponsorship deals. Have you noticed we've got my podcast reviews? Thank you very much, Daniel J. Lewis, sponsoring Podcast Pontifications this month. There are still opportunities for sponsorship for 2021, and I'm starting to book into 2022 now. I know, crazy. And by the way, these are not ads. These are not ads. I'm not running ads on the program. I offer sponsorship. Only services that are of relevance to working podcasters that I genuinely feel will make podcasting better can sponsor the show. Yeah. Now, there are also some opportunities for Podcast Pontifications to showcase your podcast if you'd like to do that. Go to podcastpontifications.com/sponsor if that's interesting to you. And with that, have a fantastic weekend. No episodes from me on Friday, as you know, but I shall be back on Monday with yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers. Video recording is stopped. Audio recording is stopped. There we go, kids. A relatively short episode for a Thursday to let you ponder that in your brain and not have me just talk about it nonstop in your brain. I hope you enjoyed that. If you are just now joining the live stream, you missed it. And sure, you could back up 14 minutes and 2 seconds and watch it from the beginning if you want to. Go ahead. However, I have an alternate path for you. If you go to podcastpontifications.com and you click the subscribe button, enter in your email address, and you, like 400 and some odd other people, yes, I can finally say 400, will get an email at 10 o'clock in the morning that gives you the actual article. All the words that just tumbled forth from my face, I will rearrange them with my fingers and brain, and I will send you a newsletter that has all those words with it. There will also be a link to the audio file if you prefer to listen, but sometimes it's nice to do both. It's not just a transcript, by the way. It's actually a rewritten article that I send out. Yes, and of course, anybody who is subscribed to Podcast Pontification on a podcast listening app will get the episode at 10 o'clock as well, because that's when the releasing time happens for the show. Okay, so that's it. I need to get this episode done. I've got 2 big projects to get underway today, so I need to get all those things done. I hope you have a very good day, productive day, and an empowering day. And I'll see you all on Monday. Bye.